have us start our practice this morning in Sphinx. I did this with my students on Sunday. We did it Sphinx a couple times, but we're going to start there today. So, and using it as your entrance in that, you know, it's the first posture. It doesn't have to be like super defined with the physical body necessarily, you know, so it can have a, like, I want to say a little sloppier feel to those of us that are perfectionists, myself included in some areas and realms, others not so much. But so the bent elbow underneath the shoulder. And really what happens is the amount of force that you kind of use with the hands pressing down and the forearms pressing down is going to leverage the body up. So that's where you can kind of work with, if you want to lower the upper body, you know, a little bit, decrease some of the activity in the lower back or even in the shoulders, and take approach that, you know, a little bit of kindness with your positioning here. And then the gaze can go forward. You could drop the chin into the chest. You know, the head doesn't necessarily have to be lifted. So I find that Sphinx has a lot of subtlety, yet there's like the power within simplicity. And I want you to be aware and kind to your body and entering your practice in utilizing this posture. And just notice the drawing in and out of your breath, and maybe trying to create that in a more fuller kind of experience. So just kind of like full filling and full exhaling, and maybe not being like a total perfectionist in it, but just kind of working with the beginnings and kind of filling your cup and then emptying your cup. Gaze staying steady. And keeping the mind, you know, starting to get it well acquainted with that filling air, expansion into the lungs, working maybe with the capacity of the lungs. And same thing with the exhale. See if you can work with this physical positioning in feeling that you're releasing the capacity of the lungs and being okay with wherever you're at. Good, let's spend a few more moments here. And then coming out slowly, feel like you kind of crawl your spine forward as you work into hand over hand with the forehead on the hands, okay? So even use like your, almost like if you were crawling like an army crawl on the ground, you know, with the flat forearm to kind of draw the spine forward, hand over hand, forehead rests on hands. And aware of the body's desire to breathe here, more by instinct and less by mind, or less by what we think we should do. Allow for the response of the body coming out of a very direct posture. And then usually that sensation can flatline a little bit, you know? So after we acclimate, time has passed. And when you kind of flatline into that space, as we're in a pretty neutral position, I want you to work back into like the idea of filling like full lung capacity and exhaling out, you know, emptying that cup, right? And work with the capacity and the structure of your lungs. The cavity that holds that like reservoir of air. And that it's not just about filling the reservoir, we also have to empty the reservoir. So we're releasing like stagnant air. And just kind of keep the mind with that theory and bringing it into practice and feel expansion, front, back, sides, maybe up into the collarbone, maybe it extends down into the back. I want you to take 3 more rounds with that breath. And then after that 3rd round, press up into tabletop. Walk the hands closer to the knees, tent up on your fingertips, and really gently round into cat, but make a little bit less space between the knees and the fingertips, okay? And use the physical body, like use internal muscular structure within the abdomen. And like notice the details and the presence of those internal muscles, like vacuum sealing your body up into cat. Even if that placement is more in theory. Good. Take 1 more breath there, holding. Release into a more flat back, walk the hands forward so they're more underneath the shoulders. And then within the inhale, we're just gonna like push our butts back like that, almost like you were coming into like a child's pose. And then exhale, come back to tabletop. And I want you to just take this gentle movement, okay? So use the inhale and use the presence of the palms and the fingers against the mat. Like feel that be kind of like a focal point. Have that be like a drishti in movement, right? The pressure of the hands in guiding like the depth to how far you sink your bottom back. And then we combine that with the breath, the inhale and the exhale, in kind of guiding this movement. And try to work with that fuller breath here. So like thinking about working and filling the lung capacity. And however that plays off in movement, it may have a different like acknowledgement or filling. It may not feel as full, or maybe it does in some respects, or the exhale, but just notice that. Good. Let's take 1 more. Come back to tabletop. Drop down onto our forearms, curl our back toes, coming into a forearm plank. Now it's like a little bit of a shock to the system, right? Like there's a whole lot of muscular exertion here. I want you to hold. And as you're kind of squeezing muscles in, noticing that the breath and the capacity of the lungs will change because there's a lot of abdominal activity. So even though you're kind of feeling like you're drawing the abdominals back, see if you can make 3 full breaths, feeling more width in the lung capacity, right? So that belly isn't necessarily going to extend because it's holding you in plank. See if you can breathe wider for 3 breaths. And then after that third breath, lower down onto your belly, hand over hand, forehead rests on the hands. And kind of unhinder, get out of the body's way, and just notice the natural response. And then notice when that kind of response, flat lines, like that haha kind of moment, moves somewhere else. And in that somewhere else space is where I want you to kind of draw back into those deeper, fuller breaths. And noticing for what they are, right? So perfection lies in our actualizing of the moment. That's like perfection to me, right? Our ability to be aware of the given moment and the given response, and not a force. It's more just an awareness. An awareness of how you can fill the lungs here is what our choice of practice is. So how aware can you be of that detail, the details in that concept? Good, and take 2 more rounds with that fuller filling of the cup and emptying of the cup. Utilizing that internal reservoir. Good, and then after that second breath, take your time getting there. We're gonna come back up into Sphinx. And here in Sphinx, I want you to push the boundaries a little bit. So I want you to, come away from that very beginning posture where we kind of, played it a little safer. I want you to really spread your fingertips. Feel that there's like almost like a little bit of a tension in the spreading of the fingertips. And I want you to notice the forearm against your mat and use that kind of like force of pressing into the mat in rising up just a little bit more with the upper body. And in that rising up, you'll notice oftentimes more sensations in the lower back, but you can do what you need to with your head and neck. So notice the separation of the head and neck area from the shoulder area. The shoulders are lifting, but the head could drop if you needed the chin to come into the chest or the gaze to kind of lower, or the head can come higher. And whatever positioning you choose in pushing the boundaries, I want you to look focal point. So your drishti, the sight has like a little job. And then the mind and the breath are going to begin to work into your Ujjayi pranayama. And it's the beginnings of the Ujjayi pranayama. So kind of like just stoke into that process. Inhales and exhales through the nostrils. But there's a guttural response in the back of the throat. It's almost like the breath wants to exit the back of the throat, but it's not. It's exiting out the nostrils. So we're taking a little bit more of a disciplined approach in holding here. And we're combining elements that belong directly to yogic practice. Good, let's hold for a few more moments. And then moving out of this posture, tabletop, tenting up on the fingertips, walking the hands closer to the knees, coming back into that cat-like shape. And just slowly vacuum seal like the abdominals. So make the movement kind of really work from internal to external. The internal muscles are making the shape, flexion of the spine. Hold. Breathe. Release from that Ujjayi practice if you want to kind of work into a fuller breath. Or maybe you kind of combine the Ujjayi practice into that fuller breath. Good, then releasing from that, walk the hands forward and come back into that movement that we began with. So inhale, push the bottom back. Exhale, kind of returning back to tabletop. And keep going through that. And maybe you find cat and cow in some of this movement. You know, I want you to feel what plays out for your body here. Notice like the structure of your spine and your pelvis in, you know, sinking back and moving back forward. Good, and then the next time you come all the way back, keep the width between your feet, and then I want you to sit up and maybe sitting just slightly in between that space. If you need blocks or anything, grab one, but we're going to keep our legs like a little bit wider just to start. Okay. And taking the hands to the front of the belly, maybe like lower, more lower abdominals. I want you to play with the movement of cow and cat here, okay? And the cow and cat movement more from this, like, because our hands are here, more from like the undulating of the pelvic movement, okay? Not so much from the spine up, it will play in, but I want you to really like have that drishti, the physical drishti, be from the pelvic movement. You could even place a hand front and back too, that works, or both hands forward. Good. Do that one more time in each direction. And then take your hands down to your side and draw the legs closer together. So now your bottom is sitting directly on your heels or your support. There's not space between the legs. And from here, when you land there, I want you to immediately feel that you draw up from the spine and not just like from the shoulders. Feel that again, there's a little bit of movement from the pelvis, like that rocking that helps guide that upper spine to take more length. Good. Shoulders, a few times rolling them around so they can kind of drop and settle down at your side. Keep working the structure of the abdomen, and there is that kind of drawing back of the space above the belly button. Gaze takes a focal point. Mind comes back into working with the Ujjayi breath practice. And here, upright, sometimes taking the chin slightly back to the neck can help, you know, noticing the guttural response, like the desire to almost breathe into and out of the throat. And this is here in these moments where we're just practicing being stiller. It's like a gateway into meditation. Or maybe you really fully begin to wrap into like the process of meditation. Good, few more moments. And then keeping the gaze and kind of keeping this atmosphere, you know, that you're kind of stoking into or kind of creating, just interlace the fingertips, but kind of keep that atmosphere with the eyes and press the palms forward. And then release that, you know, drishti or focal point as the navel comes back towards the spine and the chin comes into the chest, and hold. And so those internal, you know, muscles, you don't usually get to see them. They're working and creating this cat-like shape. They're working their presence into what we see externally, but we don't see what they're doing. Good. Keep the arms forward. Now use those muscles so that the spine comes up straight. And then just shift these hands off over to the left-hand side. So the palms are still facing away. Keep the spine tall. Hold for a breath here. And then let the hands release and notice where they fall, and they should fall kind of outside. And then use those hands wherever they fall to draw you into a twist, like a deeper twist with the spine off to the left-hand side. Good. Body comes back through center. Fingers interlace, palms press forward. Find your spine. Find its placement. And then shift those hands off over to the right-hand side. Hold. And keep feeling like a presence, like would be those palms pressing, like if there was a mat there or the ground there, right? Keep them active. Keep the belly button drawing back towards the spine, like kind of opposing actions. And then hands release, keep the torso where it is. Hands release, and then use that leverage where the hands lie in order to kind of just draw a little bit deeper into the twist to the right-hand side, and hold. Good, then coming back through center, and I want you to just drop down onto your right-hand side with your knees bent. Okay, and you can come all the way down onto your forearm with that forearm flat, and it's pointing off towards like the long edge of your mat. Left hand comes to the top of the left pelvis, and we're just going to take little pelvic lifts up, down, and we're going to use our breath in a little bit of a quicker pace to kind of work with this movement. So inhale up, exhale down, make it a little sharper and quicker. Keep it through the nostrils. Keep going. Good, 2 more. And then after that second one, draw her up, swing the legs forward, come right into Dandasana. Toes are actively pointing. Hands are down by your side. And try to draw into that space of meditation again here. So a whole lot of activity, like funnel it into a very direct gaze, a very direct physical structure, and a very direct breath practice with your Ujjayi pranayama, and hold. Good, a couple more moments. Hands come to the top of the pelvis. Lengthen up through the spine. And then hinge at the hips. Feel the hinge and feel the length and the drawing of the spine out and down. And see if you can get your fingers to your big toes and grab them. If you can't, you have a strap, great. If not, just let them land on your legs. But I want you to use the presence of the hands on something or with your strap work to continue like pulling, like feel like it's a gentle tugging of the spine, like feel like that. You feel it from the lower back, like it's like reaching out. You want to draw it out from the lower back forward and hold. And meet the sensations of the moment. It's all that's required of us. And meet it with grace and maybe some resilience and determination to kind of keep funneling into the fundamentals here of the yoga practice. And we're kind of working with the aspect of the physical body, the breath body, and the mind body. Good, one more breath here. And then after that, hands slide up the legs. Come into Dandasana structurally with the body, and then just take any movement of the head and neck. So be really structurally supportive from the shoulders down and just work movement in circulars or side to side. You can pause anywhere, reverse direction anywhere. Good, and then take that movement up into stillness. We'll hold just for a few moments in Dandasana and just notice like the lighter elements of the body and the more engaged structural elements of the body. Good, then kind of shift this atmosphere off. So to the left-hand side, knees are bent. So that atmosphere of stillness is going to come into some sharper movements. And we'll work on this side, right hand on top of the right pelvis or down by the hip, and quicker movements up, down with the breath, out the nostrils. Good, keep going. Let's get a couple more in. And then after that second one, swing back up, but this time bring the soles of the feet together into Baddha Konasana. And here in Baddha Konasana, I want you to kind of draw those like vacuum seal your stomach muscles back. Notice as you do that, the shoulders begin to round, the shape changes and come into like a cat-like shape as you fold here. But our folding isn't extending from the spine. It's more of like a cat-like shape, right? Like a draping of the spine. And hold into that with like that fuller breath practice. So kind of return to, taking away maybe some of the internal restriction of muscles and really working with like feeling that lung capacity in all forms and all sides. Good, then take your spine up. So it's tall. Keep the hands on the lower part of the shin or the ankles and lean back into this a little bit, okay? So you can really begin to feel like these arms, we're kind of like using it as leverage, like feel the shoulders are kind of pulling back, but the arms are holding you to your legs, right? So there's a more like taut tensile structure that's happening through the shoulders or like the base, the collarbone. And when you've created that, see then if you can kind of work into some like movements of the pelvis, navel towards spine, and then coming back up straight. And have this like cat and cow like shape be more from the pelvis, like when we started with our hands on our bellies, just more like a pelvic kind of rocking. Good, take one more in each direction. And then coming up tall, left knee, which is bent, is gonna kind of slide through the right, and the right knee is gonna cross over. We'll engage with our interlaced fingertips right below the knee. Use that to draw up with the spine. And then twist off over to the right. So we're kind of leveraging into more details and a little bit more precision. And I want you to push the boundaries here in this twist a little bit. Notice the rotational aspect from the lower spine all the way up through the shoulders. And maybe you continue that with the gaze. Try to work into that concept of a fuller breath here, which is totally going to change because it's being a bit more restricted in a twist. But again, perfection lies in our ability to just be aware of what is. Good, let this come undone. And then before you release the legs, I want you to see if you can like kind of bend your body forward and back just to kind of gently, you can take the hands here or you can let them come out to the side or they can come here, but like use a little just gentle rocking. And you'll notice this gentle rocking should increase some of the sensations of the hip, just feeling like you're coming forward and back. Good, and then when that lands back up straight, take the right leg. You can come back into Baddha Konasana if that helps with the transitioning of the switching of the right leg coming under now and the left on top. Interlace fingertips. So define this moment beginning with your spine. The setup starts here. And then work into twisting off to the left. And think about the moving around of like the belly and the lower spine area. Then work that up into the shoulders. And lastly, if you want the gaze to continue with the twist, you can, or the gaze can kind of look wherever it works for your cervical spine. or your neck. And hold into like a fuller breath, an internal reservoir filling and emptying. And whatever that is here. Good, and then moving out of this twist. And let's come back into tabletop. Just kind of swing your body around back into tabletop. Few rounds of cow and cat. So feel that pelvic tilting, but feel it continue up to the upper back, through the shoulders, head and neck gets into the movement. And you can take this very linear if you need to kind of like move into some circles or side movement, but use this kind of space to work out of some of the very disciplined pieces of practice that we did, or more disciplined, I should say. Like just let it feel a little bit more fluid, and being aware of like that fluidity into spaces that may need it. Good, and then kind of settle that movement into a stiller space, and then transition into downward dog. And in that transitioning, notice the presence of the hands. Use that as leverage. When the hands press against the mat, use the solid surface of the floor. Have that be a continuation through the arms, all the way up into lengthening the tailbone. Feel that your thighs like draw back, maybe in helping straightening the knees, but think about it internally. The internal muscles create the external shape. Try to draw your mind's eye into that. I want you to hold for 2 fuller breaths, and however that materializes. And then after that second breath, feet walk towards hands, Uttanasana, or your forward fold, front of the mat. Good, same thing. Meet your forward fold from an internal perspective. Create its shape from internal engagement of different muscles. And also, an internal engagement of muscles that don't need to engage. Working with the straightening of the legs, feeling from the knees, or what you can do with your thighs to support a straighter leg. And you don't have to have a straighter leg. Good, and then use the presence of those strong legs to press the feet into the mat, into the ground, and then come all the way up to standing with arms up overhead. Hold here, Urdhva Hastasana, a little bit of a tucking of the tailbone, arms stay up, and keep the rising of the spine. Push the boundaries a little bit with your body. Tuck the tailbone just slightly. It shouldn't really like cause the knee to bend or the shape of the legs to change. Just a little tucking. Hold for 1 more breath. And then let the arms come down by the side. So the movement is of the arms just releasing down by the side. The legs stay strong, the core stays strong. Pause. Work into your Ujjayi breath practice here. And really kind of hone into it in this place of stillness, because we're going to use the Ujjayi practice in our rounds of sun cells. So kind of like shake its hand again. We're kind of continue that. And so mind stays with breath practice. Our muscles are making the movement and the shapes. Next inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, little bit of gaze upwards, so you create just a slight back bend. Inhale, tuck that tailbone a little bit so it takes that stiff spine back to a straighter, more upright position. Exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. Inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Arms straighten, gaze looks forward. Take a deep, full breath in, and then in the exhale, plant the hands, step back into plank. Hold in plank. Recruit what you need. The breath comes in, and then the exhale, that's your transition down to your bellies, either a modified chaturanga or you can take a full high plank to low plank. Your inhale, up into cobra. Exhale, swing back into down dog. Hold in down dog. Push the boundaries a little bit. Work internal to external. Stay with the rhythm of the Ujjayi breath. When you come to your next Ujjayi inhale, use that to take the feet towards the hands, coming right into your half forward fold. The exhale, forward fold. Inhale, breath and body rise, arms up overhead, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, gaze looks up. Push the boundary of your back bend slightly. And it's not just a bending, it's an extension of the spine up and back. Next inhale, slight tucking of the tailbone, back to Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. Good, move with the rhythm of your body and the breath. Inhale, half forward fold, lift and look. Exhale, plant the hands, step back into plank. Hold in plank, and you can breathe here, but define this position. When you hit your next inhale, inhale in, exhale lower, either modified or full. Inhale, rise, we'll come just to cobra. Shoulders roll. Good, exhale, swing back, down dog. Define it. Hold in down dog. Utilize that time to change anything or shift anything. Internal to external shape making. And then when you hit your next inhale, use that full Ujjayi inhale to take the feet towards the front of the hands or to the hands and come right into your half forward fold. It's one swift movement. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, breath and body rise. Arms come up overhead first as Ardha Hastasana, and then exhale into a continuation of that spine, base of spine, lengthening up and back. Back bend. Inhale, back to center, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, forward fold. Good, inhale, halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, plant the hands, step back into plank. Hold for one breath in plank, so one full breath. And then the inhale swoops in, and the exhale is the lowering. Then the inhale swoops in, it rises you up to cobra, or if you want to go to upward dog. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana, your down dog. Nice. Hold for one breath there. Find it, feel it, be aware of it. And then when that next inhale swoops in, have it take you to the front of your mat, half forward fold. Good. The exhale, forward fold. Inhale, breath and body rise. Urdhva Hastasana, first straight spine. Detailed brings you into the back bend within the exhale. Gaze looks up. Inhale back to center, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, just let the hands come down by your side, mountain pose, Tadasana. Pause. Discipline space here. Ujjayi breath practice. Focal point. A lot of rallying of muscles in holding into Tadasana. Think of that internal producing that external shape. Good, and then noticing again, we'll kind of flatline into a space, right? Keep that practice going. Good, hold for one more full breath. And then the next Ujjayi, inhale, arms come up overhead. Interlace the fingertips, press the palms forward, bend in the knees, bottom comes back, just like we did at the beginning. Push it back as far as you can and those arms come out in front of you. And like opposing forces of pressing the hands forward and then sinking back. And really see how much you can sink. Can you get your belly to the top of your thighs? Could it feel like it could go between your thighs, even though we're not doing that? How much can you press your butt back in the act of kind of balancing here? And how straight can those arms be? And like, what's that force that the palms are pressing into? Feel like the ground's there. And hold. Good, one more breath. And then release that tabletop and find your movement in tabletop. Where is the movement's voice, right? In being aware of like this precise moment. That's defining what we need or how perfect we can make it, right? It's awareness into what is. And how can we utilize the tools to kind of create into that shape? Good, and then from that movement, I want you to come back down into Sphinx pose. And aware of what the definition of Sphinx pose needs to be or where it's at. And if you need a bit more, you can, come up into seal with straight arms. Or if you need less, we worked with that at the beginning, kind of lower the front body and go a little lower. And it's not about what the mind needs. It's what the moment needs. And this can change. And wherever you decide to be, work with the physical body and the mind staying with the breath body. Good, a couple more moments. And then empty that cup and just let your body release forward, hand over hand, maybe army crawling your spine a little bit more forward, and then forehead resting on hands. And notice the sweetness of that moment. It's going to change into something else, and that's okay. And then just wherever you are, you can flip on to your backs, even if you're backwards on your mat, unless you want to change that. But just flip or roll over into the back, but maybe kind of like plop from that front of the body to now the back of the body being flat. And keeping the knees bent. Soles, the feet flat. Making space between your feet. Here comes Sandy. And then just with that space between your feet and your knees, let your legs fall off over towards the right hand side. And arms and like upper body can just plop. And find that filling of the cup and emptying of the cup kind of breath, even if it's just to kind of initiate, you know, an action here or a theory. And then maybe moving into just kind of breathing more naturally. Good, draw the knees back up. And the same thing, let them kind of plop off over to the other side. Maybe a fuller, you know, thinking about that internal reservoir, very specific air and what we call prana in yoga. It's like vital to our existence. Good, and then knees come back up. I'm gonna have you take one round of bridge and just choosing your hand placement, whether you want them underneath the back, up overhead, or grabbing either edge of your mat. But feel, again, the internal muscles are making this external shape. And notice how far you want to define or push that boundary. And really push up into bridge to that level of awareness of what is in this moment. And then just hold there just slightly. And then the back can meet the mat. And it meets kind of like the ending of the practice. Anything additional you may need as far as movement or shape making before you come into final space of Shavasana. So it's in Shavasana. I will leave you, ladies, and I hope everyone has a lovely day. And thank you for practicing. I look forward to seeing you guys next week or this week for some more morning yoga. Take care, guys.